Welcome to my town! Towns do not belong to sheriffs.
Marcus. The phone.
Hand behind your back. Both of you. Now. The command cracked across Miller's diner so hard that the coffee machine seemed to stop breathing. Sheriff Earl Maddox stood beside Booth 7 with one hand on his holster and the other pointing at two black men who had been eating eggs and toast less than 60 seconds earlier. His badge shone under the yellow diner lights like a small piece of borrowed sunlight. You boys come into my town, sit wherever you want, talk back to law enforcement, and expect me to smile? Marcus Ellison did not move fast. He knew what fast movement could become in the wrong man's story. He set his fork down beside his plate, wiped his fingers once with a paper napkin, and raised both hands where everyone could see them. Across from him, Caleb Brooks stared at the sheriff with a tight jaw and a hurt that looked older than the moment. "Sheriff," Marcus said quietly, "we have not broken any law." Maddox laughed once, dry and sharp. "Law is standing right in front of you." The diner was full. Sunday morning after church. Men in pressed shirts. Women with small purses hooked over chairbacks. A little girl with syrup on her chin. A truck driver at the counter holding a mug halfway to his mouth. Nobody spoke. Nobody wanted to become part of the scene. That was how fear worked in Millhaven. It did not always shout. Sometimes it lowered its eyes and pretended to study a menu. Maddox stepped closer until his belt buckle nearly touched the edge of the table. Identification. Caleb's hand twitched toward his wallet, but Marcus gave him the smallest shake of his head. Not defiance. Discipline. For what reason? Marcus asked. The question was calm, clean, and precise. It landed wrong in the room because men like Maddox did not like questions that sounded like mirrors. "Excuse me, are we being detained, Sheriff?" A whisper moved through the diner. Someone in the back booth let out a nervous little laugh, then swallowed it when Maddox turned his head. The sheriff's face changed. Not much, just enough. His mouth tightened. His eyes narrowed. The badge on his chest rose with a slow breath. "You hear that, folks?" he said louder now. He watches television and thinks he is a lawyer. A few people looked away. One old man by the window removed his cap and stared down into it. Nora Whitaker, the waitress, stood frozen behind the counter with a coffee pot in her hand. She had served Marcus and Caleb herself. She knew they had done nothing. They had been polite. Marcus had thanked her by name. Caleb had asked about the old photographs on the wall. They had paid in cash before the food even came, because Marcus had said, softly, "Let us not give anyone a reason." The receipt still sat near the sugar dispenser. Nora saw it. Marcus saw her see it. For one fragile second, it looked like the truth might have a witness. Nora took a step forward. "Sheriff, they already paid. I have the receipt right there." Maddox did not even look at her. "Nora, pour coffee." Her face went pale. The pot trembled in her hand, the dark surface shaking like water before a storm. "I only meant," I said, "pour coffee." The microsecond of courage died in front of everyone. The little bell over the diner door moved in a draft. Nobody entered. Nobody left. Marcus kept his hands visible. Beneath the table, near his knee, the corner of a cream-colored envelope peeked from inside his coat. It carried a blue seal from City Hall, but the flap was turned inward, and no one close enough had the nerve to look. Marcus felt it there, pressed against his ribs, the one thing he had promised himself he would not use today. Not yet. He had come to see the town without ceremony, without a uniform, without people straightening their backs because they knew his name. He had not come to be tested this way. But humiliation has a way of finding people who refuse to bow to it. Have you ever watched a room decide that silence is safer than truth? Maddox reached for Caleb first. Caleb pulled his shoulders back. "I'm a teacher," he said. "I grew up here." "Then you should know better." The cuffs clicked around Caleb's wrists. The sound was small, but it changed the room. A child stopped chewing. A spoon slipped from a woman's fingers and struck her plate. Marcus looked at the cuffs, then at Deputy Cole Raines standing near the entrance, young, stiff, and pretending not to understand what he was seeing. Cole's body camera blinked red. Recording. Marcus noticed. Maddox did not. "Your camera is active, Deputy," Marcus said. Cole's eyes flicked down, then up again. Maddox turned slowly. "What did you say?" I said his camera is active. Good. Maddox grabbed Marcus's wrist harder than necessary. Then it can record you resisting. Marcus did not resist. He let the sheriff twist his arm behind his back. Pain flashed across his shoulder, but his face stayed still. Caleb jerked forward. Easy with him. Maddox shoved him back against the booth. You want another charge? The first cuff closed around Marcus's left wrist. Cold metal. Tight. The second snapped shut with a finality that made Nora cover her mouth. Maddox leaned close enough for Marcus to smell coffee and peppermint on his breath. Welcome to my town. Marcus lifted his eyes. Not angry. Not afraid. Just steady. Towns do not belong to sheriffs. The silence after that was deeper than before. It had weight. Maddox's smile disappeared. For the first time, he looked less like a man enforcing law and more like a man protecting an illusion. He yanked Marcus out of the booth. The envelope inside Marcus's coat shifted but did not fall. At the counter, a teenage boy named Jalen Price raised his phone just above the napkin holder. His thumb trembled over the record button. Maddox saw the movement. Put that down. Jalen froze. Now! The phone lowered. Another almost witness swallowed by fear. Maddox marched the two men toward the door as if the diner itself had found them guilty. Caleb's shoulder brushed the old photographs on the wall, making one frame tilt crooked. Marcus's half-finished coffee sat cooling beside the receipt that could have ended the lie if anyone had dared to pick it up. Outside, the patrol car waited under the gray morning light. Inside the diner, no one moved until Marcus's phone slipped from his coat pocket and hit the floor beneath booth 7. The screen lit up against the black and white tile. One incoming call. Nora looked down. Her breath caught. The name glowing on the screen read, Linda Voss, city manager. The phone kept glowing under booth 7 after the patrol car pulled away. Linda Voss, city manager. The name lit the black and white tile like a question nobody in Miller's diner wanted to answer. Nora Whitaker stood over it with the coffee pot still in her hand, her fingers trembling so badly the lid rattled. Outside, Sheriff Maddox's cruiser turned onto Main Street with Marcus Ellison and Kayla Brooks in the back seat. Inside, the diner stayed quiet. Not peaceful. Guilty. A man at the counter whispered. Maybe they should have just done what he said. Nora looked at the paid receipt beside Marcus's cold coffee. 2 breakfasts. Cash. Tip included. Nothing stolen. Nothing unpaid. Nothing except dignity taken in public. 3 hours earlier, Marcus had sat alone in his truck at the edge of Millhaven, engine off, both hands resting on the steering wheel. The town looked soft from a distance. Red brick storefronts, church bells, flags hanging from porches. A place that could fool you into believing pain had never learned its name. On the passenger seat lay a folded navy jacket that had belonged to his father. The cuffs were frayed. One button did not match the others. Marcus touched it with his thumb before putting it on. His father, Lionel Ellison, had worn that jacket on the day he testified against 2 officers who had beaten a boy behind a station house. After that, Lionel's career stopped moving. Promotions vanished. Friends stopped calling. But Marcus remembered what his father said at the kitchen table with a stack of unpaid bills beside him. A badge is not a crown, son. It is a promise. Marcus carried that sentence longer than he carried any rank. In the inside pocket of the jacket was a cream-colored envelope from Millhaven City Hall. He had not opened it again since dawn. He knew every word inside. He also knew what it meant. Monday morning would come with cameras, a podium, polite applause, and people pretending change was easy. But Sunday morning belonged to the truth. That was why he had asked Caleb to meet him at Miller's Diner. Caleb Brooks had grown up 3 streets from Maine, in a house where his mother kept plastic on the sofa and fear by the front door. He was a history teacher now, but Millhaven still knew how to make him feel 16 again. When he slid into the booth across from Marcus, he looked at the old photographs on the wall and said, "This place still smells the same." Marcus smiled. Grease and secrets? Caleb almost laughed. Almost. Then his eyes moved to the window, where a sheriff's cruiser rolled slowly past. "That man has hurt people here, Marcus." Marcus stirred his coffee once. "Then people need to be able to say it." Caleb leaned forward. "People here do not say things. They survive them. If you have ever been judged before you were heard, or watched someone get treated like a threat just for walking into the room, then you already know why silence can feel like safety. And you know why one calm voice can scare a powerful man more than shouting ever could. Back in the diner, that calm voice was gone, dragged out through the front door. But one small piece of truth remained. The receipt. The phone. The blinking red memory of Deputy Cole's body camera. Nora bent down slowly and picked up Marcus's phone. The call had ended. A new text appeared across the screen. Marcus, where are you? Mayor Hale is asking if you arrived safely. Nora's mouth went dry. She did not unlock it. She did not know the passcode. She only saw the words before the screen went dark. At the counter, Hank Miller, the owner, muttered, "Put in the lost and found. We do not need trouble." "Hank," Nora whispered. "What if Sheriff Maddox was wrong?" Hank looked toward the window, toward the street, toward all the years he had kept his business open by not taking sides. Wrong does not matter if he has the keys. Nora closed her fingers around the phone anyway. It was the first brave thing she had done all morning, and it was so small no one applauded. Then the bell above the door rang. Deputy Cole Raines stepped back into the diner alone. His face was pale. His body camera was gone from his chest. In his hand was a plastic evidence bag. He looked straight at Nora and said, "Sheriff wants the phone." Deputy Cole Raines held out the plastic evidence bag like it was a warrant. "Sheriff wants the phone." Nora's fingers closed tighter around it. For a second, the whole diner watched a waitress decide whether truth was worth losing her job over. Hank Miller stepped from behind the register, his apron stained with coffee and old grease. "Give it to him, Nora." "It was under their booth," she said. "It might matter." Cole looked at the floor. He was young enough to still feel shame, but not brave enough to carry it in public. "Ma'am, do not make this harder." A truck driver at the counter muttered, "They should have just showed ID." An older woman whispered back. They were eating breakfast. The diner split without moving. Half the room wanted the truth. The other half wanted the problem to leave before it touched them. Nora placed the phone into the bag, slow as a funeral. Cole sealed it and wrote nothing on the label. No time, no location, no Guigny's signature. Marcus would have noticed that. Marcus noticed everything. Across town, the Millhaven Sheriff's Office looked cleaner than it felt. White tile floors, fluorescent lights, framed photographs of Sheriff Earl Maddox shaking hands with mayors, pastors, business owners, every picture telling the same lie. Order lived here. Marcus sat on a metal bench with his wrists still cuffed behind him. Caleb sat beside him, breathing hard through his nose, trying to keep anger from becoming the story Maddox wanted. On the wall near booking, a corkboard held faded community flyers. Under them, half covered by a patrol schedule, was an old notice about civilian complaints. The corner had curled from age. Nobody had touched it in years. "Name," Maddox said. Marcus looked up. "Marcus Ellison." The clerk typed it without interest. Caleb leaned forward. "He asked for your legal reason back there. You never gave one." Maddox smiled. "Teacher, right? Then learn this. In Millhaven, attitude is probable cause. That is not law," Marcus said. His voice was low. The clerk's fingers paused over the keyboard. Deputy Cole returned with the phone in the bag and no body camera on his chest. Marcus saw the empty clip where the camera had been. He did not look surprised. He only looked at Cole. "Where is your camera, Deputy?" Cole swallowed. Maddox cut in. "Equipment issue." "Convenient issue," Caleb said. Maddox stepped close. "One more word, and I add obstruction." The room went quiet again, the same old quiet from the diner, the kind this town had practiced for years. Behind a front desk, a young dispatcher glanced at Marcus's cuffed hands, then at the unlabeled evidence bag. Her eyes stayed there a second too long. Micro hope. Small, silent, almost nothing. Then Maddox snapped his fingers. "Log it later." She looked down. Hope folded itself back into fear. In Miller's diner, Jalen Price sat in the back booth with his phone in his lap. He had lowered it when Maddox barked, but his thumb had hit record before that. 12 seconds. Maybe 15. Enough to hear Maddox say, "Welcome to my town." Not enough to prove everything. Jalen looked at Nora. "Miss Nora," he whispered, "I got some of it." Hank heard him. His face tightened. "Delete it." Jalen's eyes widened, but he cuffed them for nothing. You want her mother getting pulled over every week? Hank said. That ended the courage in the boy's face. Not the truth, just the courage. Back at the station, Maddox took Marcus's phone from the evidence bag and turned it in his hand. The screen lit with one more message before going dark. Marcus, Mayor Hale is asking if you arrived safely. Please call me. Maddox stared at the words. His smile did not vanish, but something behind it shifted. He looked toward Marcus, then toward the cream-colored envelope still tucked inside the Old Navy jacket. The blue seal of City Hall showed for half a second. Maddox reached for it and said, Now, what exactly are you carrying in my station? Maddox's fingers closed on the corner of the cream-colored envelope. Marcus did not pull away. He sat on the metal bench with his wrists cuffed behind him, shoulders straight, eyes steady, as if the station belonged to the law and not to the man standing over him. Careful, Marcus said. Maddox paused. Careful, that is sealed correspondence from City Hall. If you remove it without logging it, you turn a bad detention into evidence tampering. The clerk stopped typing. Deputy Cole looked at the empty clip on his chest where his body camera should have been. The young dispatcher behind the glass lifted her eyes. For the first time since Marcus had been dragged in, someone in that room looked at him like he might not be just another man caught in Maddox's machine. Maddox barked a laugh, but it came half a second late. Listen to him. Evidence tampering. He waved the envelope in the air. You study that on the internet? Marcus's voice stayed low. Chain of custody requires time, location, collecting officer, witness, and purpose. Your deputy brought in my phone unlabeled. Your camera went missing after the arrest. Now you're reaching into my coat without a property inventory. The words landed one by one, clean and exact. They did not sound rehearsed. They sounded lived. Cole's jaw tightened. The dispatcher looked at the plastic evidence bag on the desk. Blank label. No initials. No seal number. Micro hope passed across her face like a match struck in wind. Sheriff, she said carefully, he is right about the property sheet. Maddox turned so fast, she shrank back in her chair. Did I ask you to run a law school, Becky? No, sir. Then answer phones. The match went out. Caleb leaned forward, cuffs biting into his wrists. You know he is right. Maddox pointed at him. You are one breath away from a holding cell. For what? Caleb asked, existing too loudly. The station fell silent. Even the radio on the desk seemed to hiss softer. Maddox smiled without warmth and stepped closer to Marcus. You think big words scare me? No. Marcus looked at the sheriff's badge, then at the complaint notice curling on the corkboard. I think patterns do. That was the sentence that changed the air. The clerk looked up again. Cole looked at Maddox. Caleb stopped breathing for a second. Maddox did not understand what Marcus knew, but he understood the danger of a man who saw too much. His face hardened. Put them in interview room, too. Cole hesitated. Sheriff, they have not been charged. They will be. With what? Marcus asked. Maddox leaned down until his shadow covered Marcus's hands. Whatever I write. He snatched the envelope free. The blue City Hall seal flashed under the fluorescent light. The dispatcher saw it. So did Cole. On the front, in small black letters, were 3 words. Executive Personnel Transition. Maddox saw them too. His thumb pressed under the flap. At that exact moment, the station phone rang. Becky answered, pale. Millhaven Sheriff's Office. Her eyes lifted toward Marcus. Then, toward the sheriff. Sheriff Maddox, she whispered, City Manager Voss is on line 1. She says it is urgent. Line 1 blinked, red on the desk phone. Becky held the receiver like it had turned hot in her hand. Sheriff Maddox, City Manager Voss is asking for you. She says it is urgent. For 1 second, the room breathed again. Deputy Cole looked at the cream-colored envelope in Maddox's hand. Caleb lifted his head. Marcus stayed still on the metal bench, wrists cuffed behind him, eyes on the sheriff, waiting to see whether power would answer truth or hide from it. Maddox smiled. Tell Linda I am busy cleaning up a disturbance. Becky swallowed. Sir, she asked about a Marcus. I said I am busy. His voice snapped so hard Becky flinched. The hope in the room folded into itself. Maddox pressed the envelope flat against Marcus's chest and leaned close. You hear that? City Hall can wait. My station. My clock. My rules. Marcus answered softly. Public authority does not become private property because you repeat it. The clerk stopped breathing for a beat. Cole looked down. Maddox's eyes flashed. Put that in the report. Suspect is argumentative. That is not a charge, Marcus said. It is when I say it is. Maddox turned to the clerk. Disorderly conduct. Interference. Failure to comply. Add threatening language. Caleb jerked forward. Threatening? He barely raised his voice. Maddox pointed at him. You want resisting added too? Caleb's mouth closed, but his eyes burned. He had watched this town do the same thing to his father years before. Same badge. Same room. Same trick of turning a calm black man into a threat on paper. Cole shifted his weight. Sheriff, the diner video might not support that. Maddox slowly turned. What video? Cole realized too late. His face changed. I mean, if anyone was recording, then we collect every phone in that diner if we need to. Maddox stepped toward him. And you will remember who signed your evaluation. Cole looked away. Another witness pushed back into silence. Maddox opened the top drawer of the booking desk and dropped Marcus's envelope inside without logging it. The City Hall seal vanished under a stack of traffic forms. Personal property, he said. Marcus's eyes followed the drawer. Unlogged property in an unsecured desk. Maddox slammed the drawer shut. You really cannot help yourself, can you? Procedure protects everyone, Marcus said. Even you. A short, ugly laugh came from a sheriff. Do not dress up your attitude as procedure. He grabbed Marcus by the arm and pulled him up from the bench. The cuffs dug into Marcus's wrists. Caleb stood too, but Cole stepped between them. Separate them, Maddox ordered. Interview room 2 for the quiet professor here. Holding room for the mouth with a law degree. He is not a professor, Caleb said. And you do not know what he is. The sentence landed wrong. Maddox's head tilted. Suspicion moved across his face, slow and dark. He looked again at Marcus's old navy jacket, at the seal drawer, at the phone in the evidence bag. What does that mean? Caleb said nothing. Marcus said nothing. Silence became its own danger. Maddox stepped close to Caleb. You think I am scared of whatever little secret you brought into my town? Marcus finally spoke. You should be scared of what you are writing down. The clerk's fingers hovered above the keyboard. Becky's eyes flicked to line 1, still blinking. City Manager Voss had not hung up. Maddox saw it too. He reached over and punched the button with 2 fingers. The red light died. There, he said. No more interruptions. Then a soft chime came from the body camera dock near Cole's desk. All eyes turned. One small green light blinked beside a unit number. Upload complete. Cole's face went pale. Maddox stared at the dock as if it had spoken out of turn. Marcus looked at the green light, then back at the sheriff. For the first time, Maddox did not have a quick answer. The green light kept blinking on the body camera dock. Upload complete. Nobody moved. The little plastic unit sat in its cradle beside Cole's desk, smaller than a deck of cards, quiet as a witness that had finally found its voice. Maddox stared at it. Cole stared at the floor. Becky, behind the glass, stopped with one hand over the disconnected phone line. Marcus remained cuffed, shoulders straight, old navy jacket pulled tight across his back. Caleb looked from the green light to Maddox and whispered, "That thing saw the diner." Maddox snapped his head toward him. It saw 2 men causing a disturbance. It saw you invent one, Caleb said. The words struck the room clean. Maddox stepped forward. You want to spend Sunday in a cell? Marcus spoke before Caleb could answer. Deputy Cole's camera was active during the initial contact, the arrest, and transport. If that file uploaded automatically, it is no longer just on the device. Cole's face lost color. Becky looked at the computer near the booking desk. A small notification blinked in the lower corner. Evidence sync complete. Unit CR 17. Maddox saw it too. For the first time, his hand moved fast. He crossed the room and slapped the monitor button off. The screen went black. Technical error, he said. Marcus looked at the dark monitor. Turning off a screen does not erase a server. Silence. Even Caleb turned to him. The sentence was too exact, too calm, too familiar with the machinery of police work. Maddox hated that. You talk like a man who has been arrested before. Marcus answered, I talk like a man who knows the rules you swore to follow. Cole swallowed. His body camera clip was supposed to be routine. A traffic stop, a noise complaint, a drunk outside a bar. Not this. Not a sheriff saying, welcome to my town, while two unarmed men stood in a diner full of witnesses. At Miller's diner, Jalen Price still had 12 seconds on his phone. He sat in a back booth, knees bouncing, while Nora watched him from the counter. Miss Nora, he said, voice low, what if my video is not enough? Nora looked at the empty booth 7, the cold coffee, the paid receipt, the place where Marcus's phone had fallen. Sometimes enough starts small, she said. If you're watching this, what would you think that little green light meant? A mistake, a warning, or the first crack in a lie someone powerful thought he could control? Back at the station, Maddox grabbed the dock camera and yanked it free. The green light went dark in his hand. Now, it is evidence, he said. Mine. Marcus lifted his eyes. Then log it. Maddox leaned close. You are in no position to give orders. No, Marcus said, but procedure still exists while I am cuffed. Becky's gaze dropped to the open evidence screen on her second monitor. Maddox had turned off the main screen, not hers. A thumbnail had already loaded. Frozen video. Booth 7. Marcus with both hands raised. Caleb seated beside him. Maddox, standing over them, finger pointed like a weapon. Becky inhaled sharply. Cole heard it. Maddox heard it too. He turned slowly. What did you just see? Becky froze. Her hand drifted toward the mouse, but Maddox was already walking toward her window. Close it, she whispered. Sheriff, the system is asking for a supervisor review. Maddox slammed the camera onto the desk. I said close it. Then Marcus, still cuffed, looked at the blinking cursor on Becky's screen and said one quiet line that made the room begin to change. Do not delete the original file. Do not delete the original file. Marcus said it softly, but the room heard it like a door locking. Becky's hand froze above the mouse. The body camera thumbnail glowed on her second screen, small and damning. Booth 7. Marcus with his hands raised. Caleb beside him. Sheriff Maddox standing over them as if a badge made him taller than the truth. Maddox moved first. He reached through the open window of dispatch and slapped the monitor off. The screen went black. Computer froze, he said. Nobody believed him. Nobody challenged him. Marcus looked at the dark screen, then at Becky. He did not plead. He did not shout. He only said, systems leave footprints. Maddox turned, smiling with his teeth. So do suspects. He grabbed Marcus by the arm and pulled him toward interview room 2. Caleb tried to stand. Where are you taking him? Away from your mouth, Maddox snapped. Sit down before I give you a reason to regret teaching history. Cole blocked Caleb with one hand, but his eyes stayed on the shut-off monitor. Something had shifted in him. Not courage yet. Maybe the memory of it. Inside interview room 2, the walls were beige, the table was bolted to the floor, and the camera in the corner had a cracked plastic cover. Maddox shoved Marcus into the chair. The movement was rough, but Marcus caught himself with his shoulder and sat straight. The Old Navy jacket pulled tight across his chest. From the inside pocket, a small photograph slipped halfway out. Maddox saw it and snatched it before Marcus could move. What is this? Marcus's eyes changed. Not fear, pain. In the photograph, a younger Marcus stood beside an older black officer in a faded uniform. Lionel's son, his father. Both men faced the camera, but only one was smiling. The older man's hand rested on Marcus's shoulder. On the back, in careful handwriting, were 9 words, a badge is not a crown. It is a promise. Maddox read it, then laughed under his breath. Goo. Marcus's voice went colder. Give it back. Now, he cares about property. Maddox waved the photograph near the camera. This your hero? Marcus looked at the picture, not the sheriff. That man told the truth when silence would have saved him. The room went still. Through the glass, Becky watched. Cole stood in the hall, close enough to hear. Caleb sat on the bench outside, his cuffed hands clenched, listening to a wound older than all of them. Maddox tossed the photograph onto the table. Truth did not save him, did it? Marcus looked up slowly. No. but it saved the boy he testified for. That sentence landed hard. Even Maddox blinked. For a moment, the station seemed to hold its breath around the memory of a man who had lost promotions, friends, and peace because he refused to lie for a uniform. Then Maddox leaned down. Around here, truth belongs to whoever writes the report. Outside, Becky quietly turned her second monitor back on. The evidence page reopened. The body cam file was still there, locked by automatic upload. Beside it, an old archive notice flashed. Related complaint pattern found. She clicked once before fear could stop her. A list appeared. Dates. Names. Diner disturbances. Unlabeled property. Missing camera footage. One name near the bottom made her hand fly to her mouth. Brooks, Daniel. Caleb's father. In the hallway, Caleb saw her face. "What did you find?" he whispered. Becky looked from the screen to him, pale as paper. Before she could answer, Maddox stepped out of the interview room holding Marcus's photograph in one hand and the cream-colored City Hall envelope in the other. "Bring them both to the front," he ordered. "If they want an audience, I will give them one." Maddox brought them to the front desk like trophies. Marcus first, hand still cuffed behind him. Caleb beside him, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the photograph in the sheriff's hand. The station lobby was no diner, but it had its own crowd now. Becky behind dispatch glass. The clerk at booking. Deputy Cole near the evidence dock. Two officers returning from patrol. A woman waiting to report a stolen purse. A man paying a traffic fine. Everyone turned when Maddox raised his voice. "Look closely," he said. "This is what happens when outsiders come here and think they can run my station." Marcus said nothing. The old Navy jacket hung, uneven on his shoulders. The inside pocket was open now, empty where the envelope had been. Maddox slapped the cream-colored City Hall envelope onto the front desk beside Lionel Ellison's photograph. "They carry fancy paper, talk fancy law, and expect people to bow." Caleb stepped forward. "That is his private property." Maddox pointed one finger at him. "Your friend is one sentence away from impersonation charges." The word moved through the lobby. Impersonation. The man paying his fine leaned back. The woman with the purse looked at Marcus as if a new story had just been handed to her. Maddox felt the room tilt his way, and he fed it. He refused identification. "That is false," Marcus said. "He disrupted a business. We paid before the food arrived. He threatened my deputy." Marcus looked at Cole. Deputy Raines knows that did not happen. Cole opened his mouth. Maddox turned before sound could leave it. "Careful, son. Your probation review is not finished." Cole closed his mouth. False victory settled over the room like smoke. Maddox had the badge. Maddox had the desk. Maddox had the crowd. He picked up Lionel's photograph and read the words on the back with a mocking softness. "A badge is not a crown. It is a promise." He looked up. Pretty words. Useless words. Marcus's face tightened, but his voice stayed level. "They were my father's." For the first time, the woman with the stolen purse lowered her eyes. Becky glanced at her screen again. The archive notice still glowed faintly on the second monitor. Related complaint pattern found. Brooks, Daniel. Diner disturbance. Missing footage. She took one small breath. "Sheriff," she said, barely above a whisper, "there is a match complaint in the system." Maddox's head snapped toward her. "Close it. It has the same location. Close it now." Becky's hand shook over the mouse. Micro-hope flickered. Caleb heard the name before the screen vanished. "Daniel Brooks?" His voice broke on his father's name. Maddox slammed a palm on the counter. "Enough." The lobby jumped. The green light on the evidence dock blinked once, then steadied. The bodycam upload was still there. Maddox saw it and moved fast. He yanked the power cable from the dock. The light died. "Technical failure," he said. "Happens all the time." Marcus looked at the dead dock. "Not after upload." Maddox stepped close, lowering his voice, but keeping it sharp enough for the room. "You are done speaking." He shoved a printed form across the desk. "Sign this statement. Admit you escalated the disturbance. Admit you refused orders. Then maybe I let your teacher friend go home." Caleb said, "Do not sign that." Maddox smiled. "Listen to him, and you both stay." Marcus looked at the paper. The wording was already typed. His guilt had been prepared before his voice was heard. He lifted his eyes to the sheriff. You wrote the ending before you investigated the beginning. The sentence quieted the room again. Maddox did not like quiet he did not control. He grabbed the envelope, tore the edge with his thumb, and stopped when the station computer gave a sharp warning tone. Becky's black screen woke by itself. White letters appeared across it, large enough for Cole to read from the hall. Supervisor credentials required. Executive transition file locked. Maddox stared at the words. Then the front door opened, and every head turned toward the woman standing in the doorway with a City Hall badge clipped to her coat. The woman with the City Hall badge stepped into the station, and Sheriff Maddox treated her like another interruption. Her gray coat was damp from the morning air. Her eyes moved from the torn envelope to Marcus's cuffed wrists, then to Caleb standing beside the front desk. She did not speak at first. She only looked, and that made Maddox angrier than shouting would have. "This is a police matter," he said. "Step back outside." The woman lifted her badge higher. City Hall received a disconnected call from this station. Phones drop. The transition file is locked. Systems glitch. Why is that man in cuffs? The lobby tightened. Becky stared at her desk. Cole looked at the floor. The woman with the stolen purse took one step back, as if truth had become dangerous to stand near. Maddox placed both hands on the counter and smiled like a man performing for a crowd. Because that man caused a disturbance, refused lawful orders, and may be carrying false official documents. A soft murmur moved through the room. False documents. The words did what Maddox wanted. They changed the shape of Marcus in people's eyes. A calm man became suspicious. A sealed envelope became a trick. A question became a crime. Marcus said, "I have not claimed to be anything." Maddox snapped back, "You implied plenty." Caleb stepped forward. He did no such thing. "Quiet, teacher." Maddox picked up Lionel Ellison's photograph and tapped it against the counter. "You brought props. You brought speeches. You brought City Hall paper. Now you want everyone to believe you are important." Marcus's jaw moved once. The photograph was bent at one corner now. His father's handwritten sentence was still visible on the back. "A badge is not a crown. It is a promise." Maddox saw Marcus looking at it and smiled wider. "This is the problem with men like you. Always reaching for a chair that was not meant for you." The line hit the room hard. Even Becky closed her eyes. Marcus did not lower his head. "No chair justifies cruelty," he said. For a moment, the City Hall woman's face changed. Recognition, maybe, not of his title, of his restraint. She reached toward the envelope. "Sheriff, I need to see that document." Maddox pulled it away. "You need a warrant to interfere with an arrest. That is not how this works. It is today." Then he shoved the typed statement back toward Marcus and uncuffed only his right hand. The left stayed locked behind him, forcing his shoulder at an ugly angle. The pen rolled across the desk until it touched his fingers. "Sign." Marcus looked at the paper. No, Maddox leaned close. "Sign, where your friend goes into holding, and I announce to every officer in this county that you walked in here with forged City Hall documents." Caleb's face went still. The crowd believed Maddox had won. He had the form. He had the envelope. He had the photograph. He had one of Marcus's hands trapped behind his back, and the other pushed toward a lie. Becky's second monitor suddenly flickered. The evidence file reopened by itself, frozen on one frame from the diner. Maddox's finger pointed at Marcus. Marcus's hands were clearly raised. At the bottom of the screen, a system banner appeared. "External Supervisor Review Requested." Maddox saw it and lunged for the power switch. Before he reached it, a voice from the open doorway cut through the station. "Stop! Stop!" The word froze Maddox with his hand inches from the power switch. The lobby turned toward the doorway. Mayor Patricia Hale stood there in a dark coat, rain on her shoulders, a leather folder tucked under one arm. Behind her, the City Hall woman stepped fully into the light. Linda Voss. Her badge hung against her coat, but her eyes were not on Maddox. They were on Marcus, one wrist still cuffed behind him, the other forced toward a confession he had refused to sign. Nobody spoke. The woman with the stolen purse lowered her phone. The man with the traffic ticket stopped smirking. Even the radio seemed to soften into static. Maddox recovered first, but not cleanly. "Mayor, This is not the time. His voice had a crack in it now, small but real. These men are in custody. Patricia Hale looked at the typed statement on the desk, then at the torn City Hall envelope, then at Lionel Ellison's bent photograph. In custody for what? Maddox lifted his chin, disturbing the peace. Refusing orders. Possible forged documents. Marcus did not answer. He only looked at the photograph of his father lying face up under the station lights. Linda Voss took one step closer to the desk. Why is an executive transition file out of its envelope? Maddox put his palm over it. Evidence. Linda's voice sharpened. Then where's the property log? Becky behind dispatch glass looked down at the blank evidence bag. Deputy Cole swallowed. The room heard it. Maddox pointed at Marcus. He tried to use City Hall paper to intimidate this department. I said nothing about that envelope, Marcus said. His voice was quiet enough to make people lean in. You opened that story yourself. The silence deepened. On Becky's second monitor, the frozen body cam frame still glowed. Maddox standing over booth 7. Marcus's hands raised. Caleb seated. No langing. No threat. No chouse. Just power leaning over dignity. Patricia saw it. Linda saw it. Cole saw them see it. Maddox moved fast. That footage is incomplete. Then let it play, Linda said. It is under review. By whom? By me. That is the problem, Marcus said. For words. No anger. No fear. They made the lobby colder. If you were in that station, who would you watch now? The sheriff guarding the screen? The officials studying the file? Or the man still standing in cuffs who, somehow, knew every rule being broken? Maddox turned on him. You are done talking. He grabbed the statement again and shoved the pen against Marcus's free hand. Sign it. Mayor Hale stepped forward. Sheriff, remove the cuffs. Maddox laughed once, but it came out thin. With respect, Mayor, you do not run arrests. Linda reached over Becky's counter and turned the monitor slightly toward the lobby. A loading bar moved across the body cam file. 5%. 12. 19. The crowd watched it like a fuse. Maddox's face drained. He reached for the screen, but Cole stepped half an inch into his path. Not enough to rebel. Enough to delay. The file opened. Sound crackled from the speakers. A diner bell. A chair scraping. Maddox's own voice began to form in the room. Linda lifted one hand and said, Before anyone judges these men, watch this. The diner footage filled the station lobby with a truth Maddox could not shout over. First came the bell above Miller's door, then the scrape of a chair, then the sheriff's own voice, loud and clean through the speakers. You boys come to my town, sit wherever you want, talk back to law enforcement, and expect me to smile? Nobody breathed. The woman with the stolen purse lowered her eyes. The man with the traffic ticket stopped, leaning against the wall. Deputy Cole stared at the floor as the camera showed Marcus with both hands raised, calm, visible, not reaching for anything. Caleb sat still in the booth. Nora's voice came through next, shaking but clear. Sheriff, they already paid. I have a receipt right there. On the screen, Maddox cut her off. Noha? Pourquoi fi? Linda Voss paused the video. The lobby was so quiet the old clock above booking sounded too loud. Maddox lifted one hand. That clip does not show what happened before. Marcus looked at him. There was no before. Linda pressed play again. The screen showed Maddox cuffing Caleb first. Then Marcus. No resistance. No threat. Only the sound of metal closing and a whole diner choosing fear. Then came the line. Welcome to my town. A soft gasp moved through the room. Maddox's face went pale around the mouth. That is taken out of context. Mayor Patricia Hale opened her leather folder and placed a document on the counter. Then let us add context. Maddox stared at the blue City Hall seal. Linda took the torn envelope from under his hand, slid out the document, and read the first line aloud. Executive Appointment Confirmation. Marcus Lionel Ellison, Incoming Chief of Police, Millhaven Police Department. Effective Monday, 9:00 a.m. The words did not explode. They landed, one after another, heavy enough to make every badge in the room feel smaller. Cole looked up so fast his breath caught. Becky covered her mouth. Caleb closed his eyes like a prayer had finally found the right address. Maddox shook his head. No, that is not possible. Mayor Hale reached into her folder and placed a small black case on the desk. She opened it. Inside was a polished badge, new and untouched, engraved with one title, Chief of Police. Marcus did not reach for it. He did not smile. He only looked at the cuffs still on his wrist. Linda turned to Cole. Deputy Raines, take the cuffs off Chief Ellison. The word chief changed the room. Cole stepped forward, hands unsteady, and unlocked the metal from Marcus's wrist. The cuff fell away with a small click that sounded larger than Maddox's shouting ever had. Marcus rubbed the red mark once, then turned toward Caleb. Him too. Cole unlocked Caleb immediately. Maddox pointed at Marcus. He concealed his identity. Marcus answered, I came here as a citizen. You show me how citizens are treated. No one moved. No one defended the sheriff. Linda lifted the unlabeled evidence bag with Marcus's phone inside. Mayor Hale picked up Lionel Ellison's bent photograph and read the back in silence. Then she looked at Maddox. You cuffed the man appointed to lead this department, tried to force a false statement, removed evidence from a sealed file, and disconnected a city call. Maddox's lips parted, but no defense came out. Marcus finally reached for his father's photograph, smoothing the bent corner with his thumb. He placed it beside the new badge, not above it, not below it. Equal. Memory and duty. Linda turned to Becky. Send the body cam file, the diner footage, the property log, and the archive pattern to Internal Affairs now. Becky nodded, tears bright in her eyes. Maddox looked around the lobby for one familiar face to save him. Every face looked back. Mayor Hale stepped closer and asked the question that left him with nowhere to hide. Sheriff Maddox, how many people did you do this to before you made the mistake of doing it to him? Mayor Hale's question stayed in the lobby like a sentence already written. Sheriff Maddox looked from face to face, searching for the old version of Millhaven, the one that always looked away. He found only silence. Becky's fingers moved across the keyboard. The body cam file transferred, the diner footage attached, the unlabeled phone bag, the torn City Hall envelope, the bent photograph, the false statement, the missing property log, all of it entered the record one piece at a time. Maddox lifted both hands. This is a misunderstanding. Linda Voss did not blink. No, a misunderstanding is a wrong address. This is a pattern. I was protecting my town. Marcus stood beside the desk, wrists red, his father's photograph in his hand. You were protecting your control. The words were quiet. They hit harder because they were not shouted. Deputy Cole stepped forward, voice shaking. Mayor Hale, the camera was active from the diner to the station. He told me to remove it after booking. Maddox turned on him. Watch yourself, son. Cole's face went pale, but this time he did not look down. I should have spoken sooner. Caleb let out a breath he had been holding for years. Becky clicked again. The archive pattern is sending now. It lists 9 similar complaints. Missing footage, unlocked property, diner disturbances. One is Daniel Brooks. Caleb's eyes filled, but he did not hide them. That was my father. The lobby changed again. Not louder. Softer. The woman with the stolen purse covered her mouth. The man with the traffic ticket stared at the floor. Maddox's badge, bright on his chest, suddenly looked heavy. Mayor Hale turned to him. Sheriff Earl Maddox, pending formal review, you are suspended from active duty effective immediately. Maddox laughed, but nobody joined him. You do not have the authority. Linda placed a second document on the desk. The emergency oversight order was signed this morning. The transition begins now. The word transition made Maddox look at Marcus for the first time, not as a suspect, but as the man he had failed to recognize. Mayor Hale held out her hand. Your badge and service weapon. Maddox did not move. 2 officers near the wall shifted uncomfortably. Marcus raised one hand, not to command, but to stop the room from turning cruel. No spectacle, he said. Do it by policy. That made the silence deeper. Even now, after everything, he protected the process Maddox had abused. Slowly, with a face drained of color, Maddox removed the badge from his chest and placed it on the counter. The small metal sound made Nora's paid receipt, the body cam light, the City Hall seal, and Lionel Ellison's old words feel suddenly connected. A badge is not a crown. It is a promise. Maddox pushed the badge away as if it had betrayed him. This is not over. Marcus looked at him. For the people in those complaints, it is finally starting. Linda turned to Becky. Preserve every file. No deletions. No edits. No local-only copies. Becky nodded through tears. Yes, ma'am. Mayora le fast Marcus. Chief Ellison, your name will be corrected in the incident report. You and Mr. Brooks are released with a full written acknowledgement that you were unlawfully detained. Chief Ellison. This time the title did not land like a twist. It landed like repair. Caleb looked at Marcus, then at the photograph in his hand. Your father would have liked that. Marcus smoothed the bent corner one last time. He would have asked what happens next. Outside the station windows, a small crowd had gathered near the sidewalk. Some had come from the diner. Nora stood among them, holding the original paid receipt in both hands like a fragile piece of truth. Jalen stood beside her, phone pressed to his chest. When Marcus stepped toward the door, still carrying the photograph, the new badge waiting unopened on the desk behind him, the crowd parted. Not out of fear this time, out of respect. And at the edge of the crowd, a little boy looked up at him and whispered, "Are you going to make it safe to tell the truth?" The little boy's question stopped Marcus at the station door. Are you going to make it safe to tell the truth? Marcus looked down at him, then at the crowd gathered on the sidewalk. Nora held the paid receipt in both hands. Jalen held his phone against his chest like it weighed more than glass and metal. Caleb stood beside Marcus with red marks still circling his wrists, the same marks his father had carried in silence years before. Marcus knelt, so his eyes were level with the boys. That is the job, he said. Not protecting power, protecting people. Nobody clapped. It was better than that. People listened. On Monday morning, the meeting room at City Hall was full. Not with ceremony, with witnesses. Nora sat in the front row. Jalen sat beside his mother, both hands folded around the phone that had captured 12 seconds of courage. Becky sat near the aisle, pale but steady. Deputy Cole stood in the back, no longer hiding from what he had seen. On the table before Marcus lay 3 objects: the new chief of police badge, his father's bent photograph, and the diner receipt. One proved authority. One remembered sacrifice. One proved innocence in a room that had almost chosen a lie. Mayor Hale raised her right hand. Marcus raised his. His voice did not shake when he took the oath. But when Linda Voss pinned the badge to his jacket, his fingers touched the photograph in his pocket. For a moment, he was back at his father's kitchen table, hearing that old sentence again. A badge is not a crown. It is a promise. After the oath, Marcus did not give a victory speech. He turned to the room and said, "Every complaint will be heard. Every camera file will be preserved. Every person who walks into this department will be treated like they belong to the truth, not to someone's opinion of them." Caleb lowered his head. Nora wiped her eyes. Jalen finally let out the breath he had been holding since the diner. The first change came that afternoon. Marcus ordered the old complaint board taken down and replaced with a public reporting desk staffed by people outside the department. He created witness protection rules for residents who feared retaliation. He required body cam audits. He reopened the cases marked dismissed without review. And he put Nora's receipt in a clear evidence sleeve, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that small truths can survive large lies. Sheriff Maddox did not stand at the center anymore. He sat with investigators, quiet, stripped of the voice that once filled every room. Marcus never mocked him. He only asked that the record be complete. Weeks later, Marcus returned to Miller's Diner. The bell above the door rang softly. This time, nobody froze. Hank came from behind the counter and placed 2 coffees at booth 7. "On the house," he said. Marcus shook his head and laid cash beside the cups. Respect does not need a discount. Nora smiled. Jalen held the door open for an elderly black man entering with a worn cap and careful steps. "Welcome in, sir," Jalen said. The man smiled like those words had reached something tired inside him. Marcus watched from booth 7, his father's photograph beside the coffee, the badge resting over his heart, the morning light falling warm across the table where humiliation had once sat. And for the first time in a long time, Millhaven felt like a town learning that dignity does not depend on color, clothing, age, money, or a badge, but on the courage to see a person before judging them.